I think this has been the most like emphatic support of people in industrial design, in design in general. It's been a sort of broader scope to say that like all designers everywhere are creating a lot of value that we aren't seeing given back to us.
Yeah, I really agree with her sentiment. And I actually, yeah, I think what you're saying is true. It's sort of rare for people to be as direct about it as she is, and she has built her business on being. And yet it still feels very positive. I think she's focusing a lot on helping designers just believe in themselves in a strong way. It's not necessarily about like having lots of angst. It's about having like a lot of confidence and the tools to promote your work and promote your needs and yourself.
Right. It's easy to feel kind of unjust about it, but I think her attitude around it makes it sort of like an exciting issue to tackle, like something that can and should be solved rather than a roadblock.
Hmm. Yeah, more like just getting this knowledge is like a very natural stepping stone.
Yeah, it's really matter of factly, and I think that that helps with like when you're proclaiming it, it feels like you're overcompensating. Like, no, believe me, you're defensive. I'm worth this much. I should get paid. There's none of that beating around the bush with her. She just states it straightforward.
Yeah, I think it builds on the sentiment from Brittany's episode that I keep thinking about of just how much your intuition knows what's going on, right? And that you need to just get better at like listening to the things you already know rather than
Yeah.
getting sucked into a bunch of like corporate BS.
Yeah, and Angela has good arguments for each of her like cases, and she can bring examples and she can point out where and how designers value and increase profit, change the business. So it's not just her advocating for the industry, it's her like being super specific how industry benefits, like general industry benefits of bringing designers where they are needed.
Right. And she has this amazing cross section of the industry that none of us could ever have. No one's going to switch jobs 50, 100 times and know
More,
that
yeah.
many companies and that many designers. Having that view from above, I think, is really helpful. It gives you a kind of clarity and the factual stuff to back it up.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I wish we could have more of that access, like all the time. Because we kind of rely on just speaking to each other off to the side, mentorship or informational chats, and it's one at a time. If we could have that, you know, grand view, I guess there's like industry reports and averages, but it's not nearly as descriptive as what she has access to.
Yeah, the volume is a huge deal for sure. I mean, I think that's kind of even at why we are doing this, right? Even just the volume of the women's experiences in this industry is unknown, like an untapped conversation.
We're so pleased to bring you a candid conversation with Angela Yeh, who runs Yeh Ideology. She has a long career starting in industrial design and also doing management and education before moving into career coaching and running a recruitment firm that specializes in design strategy and innovation.
Right now, I'm speaking to you in my Upper East Side apartment in Manhattan, and I've been here for ages. But years ago, before I even met my husband at the time, I believe in trying everything. I believe in the concept of visualizing, manifesting. I have a vision board. And years ago, living in the city, you really need to step away from Manhattan. It's such a manic jungle, right? And sometimes you just need to step away from the concrete jungle. And I remember dreaming that one day I would have some place, outside of Manhattan. Before I knew it, I found surfing. I love surfing. I'm a longboard surfer.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, I discovered it actually very late in my life. I think at like 35. I was a recovering workaholic, never gave myself vacations. And, I had broken up with my boyfriend at the time of like 14 years. Finally, I'm like, I'm going to go on vacation. I did 2 years of vacation. And then the third year, I almost got away with not going on vacation. In the last moment, I decided, am I going to go rock climbing? Should I learn how to surf? or should I do kayaking? I'm like, kayaking, I'd be waterlogged. Rock climbing, I probably wouldn't stand it very long. Surfing, I could be in the water and look at the horizon and check out all these guys, all these great, people fit and physically fit and everything. And next thing you know, I found surfing, loved it, discovered Long Beach, Long Island, and found my husband at the time, my boyfriend at the time, Vic. And, it's really interesting. On my vision board, or I always dreamed that I would find someone. I mean, it would be amazing if I could find someone who could tolerate my surfing addiction. And sure enough, here I am 11 years later, and Vic loves to surf like I do. And my son now, Nico, who's 10, surfs with us.
That is so cool.
You
Wow.
found a surfer on the beach. It
Yeah.
sounds exactly why I started snowboarding when I was 14.
Yeah, you got so many things in life. You got to wish for it. You got to want it, right? And work towards it is the point, right? So I did it. I love it.
How did you know that you wanted to do something physical? I think when you were like sort of resetting, a lot of the activities that you listed were very active and like physical based. Are you somebody that processes feelings or like gets happy that way?
Actually, I grew up in a very conservative suburban childhood. Everybody went to the pool, and if people went to the beach, all they did was lay out. And I can't just lay out in the sun. I need to do something. So none of the people around me were active, and that was just me resetting my life at that time. Finding yourself and finding not living for someone else. This is something I had to learn to do.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I think women do this a lot more than men, I think, but I've seen it both ways, where sometimes you live for someone else, live someone else's lifestyle, but not your own.
Right.
So I just came to realize that was like an ultimate dream. I've always wanted to, learn how to do it. And then I found out, oh, you don't have to be young. You can learn how to surf.
Yeah.
So.
And it's really empowering to learn a new skill like that at any point, right? And sort of cool when you are
Absolutely.
like not thinking you're going to be like a new learning person. That's very cool.
You learn a lot when you're striving for something. And if you do it out of passion, there's a different perspective that you can move through what you're learning. And it's actually interesting for me, as I go through later, when we talk about the coaching, it's given me an interesting perspective, because surfing is something where you cannot continue. There's a point where you hit a ceiling, a max capacity of learning, and that's it. And then you've got to keep going to other people. Surfing, it's interesting. You're in the water. I can't necessarily gauge which waves are better for me. That's just my thing. And someone next to me who knows, like friends who, allies, having your friends there who go, oh, that's the wave. You're good at this one. Go take that one. Or you're too off on the inside, or a coach to tell you, yeah, you're lazy foot on this, or you always, you don't plant your feet the right way, and you think you are. You know what I mean? And that outside perspective is amazing. Right?
Yeah. And just so much support, everybody being so enthusiastic for you to be getting good at the thing. Yeah,
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. And the camaraderie more than anything. I love the women that I've found surfing that have become, my posse.
Yeah, cool.
I started surfing.
Yeah? Wait, when?
You started surfing?
Yeah, I started surfing at 30. I guess it's not late in life, but also, sure, not the youngest.
Yeah. Or just to do anything, right? I love it. The exhilaration of trying something new. But yeah, surfing, I love it. It's exhilarating. My friends used to call me the bomber because I would just take everything. And I love wiping out.
Oh, this is so awesome. We've got to post a video of you surfing when we share that we did an episode with you.
I'm not gonna, let me just set expectations. I don't take the crazy waves anymore. After a while now, it's like my husband and I, we love like the 3-foot, the 2-foot waves to the 4-foot waves, nothing bigger than that.
I think standing up, just the fact that you're doing it is very impressive to a lot of people. So
I love it. Yeah. And here I am doing it at 56. I love that.
Oh, dang.
Nice.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
And that's one of those sports where I just went to Costa Rica in February with my family, and you get to this town, you see all these people who are 60, 70, ripped and just beaming, wet coming out of the water. I'm like, that's where I want to be in 10 years from now, and 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, don't ever let anyone tell you you're too old.
Exactly. It's all mind over matter. Well, there's things you've got to keep in mind.
Sure.
Physicality. I got to get this, I got to get my ass in gear. Work on my abs.
You're talking about kind of a big shift in your mindset towards career taking a vacation, spending some time to work on yourself and doing something physical. What was happening in your career at that time?
At that time, let's see, what year was that? Was that 2013? Well, I'm horrible on dates, but I think I had just broken up with my boyfriend of 14 years, and afraid, I think very afraid to be adventurous. And yet here I am, by that point, was a designer. It was a designer design director, had shifted into recruiting, had built a successful recruiting business career, doing a lot of things professionally, but I didn't transfer that bravery, I guess, to my personal life. And that was a big shift. And it's interesting because now when I work with people, I've noticed sometimes we tend to compartmentalize where we're brave, because that's the one area we can say, that's where I'm going to be audacious and excited. And I created this framework to be open-minded. But that was really hard for me to be single again, to let go of something that wasn't healthy for me, to honor myself.
Can you talk a little bit about the bravery process in your career up to that point? Because it sounds like you had made a lot of decisions that weren't simple, right? Like getting into design itself, the choice to shift into recruiting. Sort of curious about your path professionally when you were in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and how you built this company that you have now.
I think about my history. I've kind of just fallen into the things that I love doing. I think I'm a natural people person ever since I was young. Have a sense about people and what they're moving through, not just individually, but group dynamics is really fascinating to me. Well, my undergrad was psychology, and actually psychology with a minor in sculpture. I think that I myself would be so hard on myself on if I could gauge how well I did, I would over fixate on if I was doing it right or not. And getting into art was at some point something that allowed me to be creative and free of expression without having to gauge how well I did. It's interesting. And then actually as a designer, I quickly, we were at Pratt in the master's program. I went so my undergrad was psychology. I did a couple of years of research in developmental psychobiology. That's where you have people thank the Lord for people who are gifted and love science, because that is not me. We have people where we did a developmental psychobiology research on little rat pups that were the size of that first digit of my pinky.
Like my gosh.
Tiny little rat pups. And, people would get so excited at experiment number 147P. So every number had to go through A through Z, because science is about data points, thousands and thousands of data points, right? And they get so excited. This rat pup cried 8 times instead of 5. What does that mean? Right? And you're just people who geek out about that. And I was like, oh, this is not for me. I got my name on some research papers, but I didn't love it. And then I left to go study industrial design, because I just, when I was studying psychology, I was at University of Bridgeport and in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And it was the year before I got there, was on Playboy's top 10 party school lists.
Is that why you went? You were like, that has me written all over it.
Honestly, I barely got into college. My teachers were like, she's so smart. Why don't you apply yourself? I didn't know what I wanted back then. I really didn't. But the people who would, I'd go out and party, and the only people who were not partying were these designers sanding away way back then on Bondo models. Does anybody remember?
Yes.
Really? I was going to say, you guys look so young. You probably don't even remember Bondo models.
Right?
I've Bondo.
I did Bondo
things
models.
Breathed in so much Bondo.
So I would, go out at 10 and come back at 3 or 4 in the morning, and these guys are still sanding away. This is going to be a drill, or this is going to be some doorknob, or, something like that. And so when I went into psychology and I was so bored with that research, I knew I wanted to go back, and I felt like industrial design had some science to it, that it wasn't beauty for the sake of beauty, that there was some business purpose to it.
Did you also already understand how your psychology interest would lend itself to design? Like, did you understand both? Oh, okay.
No, not at all. I had no idea that would, there's no, oh yes, I'm going to combine psychology with industrial design, and then it'll go into recruiting, and it'll all come together. I was so clueless. There was no foresight to that. It was just doing what came naturally to me, things that I enjoyed. Going to Pratt it was so fascinating to me how everybody, if we all sang the same song, we would all sing the same song differently. Same thing with design. When I would look at my classmates and we were all tasked with the same, unseatable chair design project, everybody would come at it slightly differently. Maybe there's some commonality to how we came to a solution, but there would be outliers, and some would be more creative, some would be more technical, you know what I mean? Some would be more branded in their process. It was really interesting to notice that variation in people. And then, I mean, I applied for any job, not knowing where I stood. I actually quickly got into design management. Actually, I was at Milano Series. Oh, I was a designer there. At Danzig, I was a design manager. And then I got to Estee Lauder as a associate design director. But I found that I didn't love it. And I didn't even know what it was. But the one thing that I remember loving the most was when I was at Dansk tabletop, Dansk tableware. The one role that I loved most was being a design manager and interviewing designers. And really, most of my time was spent telling people, "Oh, you shouldn't come to us. You should go over to Fisher Price, or your work is so beautiful." I'm like, if we found great tabletop designers that did amazing stemware or silverware, that was amazing. But sometimes I'd meet people who are gifted, and I'm like, "Oh, don't go here. You should be doing sports, or you've got to go do medical." And I felt like I could just see it. Then I moved on to Estee Lauder. Didn't love that. It was just too corporate for me. I hated it. I hated it so much. It was so toxic. It was a lot of politics, and I'm so not the kind of person who can handle politics, toxic politics. I mean, I actually had bald spots on my head from the pressure.
So much
Wow.
stress.
Yeah.
Wow.
And back then I didn't know, and I left. And it's interesting because back then I met Junu Pachter actually had come to me and said, "You seem like you could be good at recruiting." And I didn't know it then. And interviewed with them, and I realized, wait a minute, if I'm going to do this, for some reason, I just knew, I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I want to interview with as many recruiting firms. And, how do I want to do this? I want to do this my way. And at the time, there weren't any recruiting firms that had a specialty in industrial design. So I ended up choosing Judy Wirt & Co. and building the practice of recruiting industrial design there. And that's how I started.
I wonder, that's like moving to management and like being creative director. Was it for you just like climbing the ladder, or you wanted to work with people?
I'm going to tell you that I was clueless. I knew I loved designing. I didn't love the work, but I could do it. But what was worse for me was the toxic environment, and there wasn't any support in the department that I was in, to help me understand what the team wanted. There was a lot of competition from people in that department at the time. This is a very long time ago, from other people who rose up through the ranks who were not design background, but they were product managers or marketing managers. That design came in, and what's design coming in and taking, telling me what to do. And I'm clueless about it because I'm just doing this because I love it. I'm like, oh, we could create a collection like this. We were, I had no idea then. I really didn't. Moving through my early years, I had no idea where I stood, where I was best.
Yeah.
There was a lot of guessing. I mean, I just interviewed and interviewed. Part of my exercise for me was just interviewing at as many places as I could to land a job. Sometimes I even ended up landing jobs at places that I didn't even want to be at. When you get so good at the interviewing part, and then I'm like, oh my God, how did I land here? How do I get out of this? It's really funny.
So when you first stepped into management, though, I guess I'm curious, like if that was something like Margaret's question, you were seeking managing people because you liked the experience of sort of like leading a team, or were you just a good designer and you sort of ended up there and you were trying to piece together how to make that work?
I had already been managing at Dansk, and I knew I wanted to get to manage a bigger collection and work with people. I had led just a small team of designers. So, you're thinking the next progression is moving up. And I did. I loved it. And I thought, I wanted to work on something bigger scale. And I did. So, went to Estee Lauder, worked on bigger collections, and it was fun to do it. But the environment itself wasn't the best.
Do you now feel very quick to recognize when you're working with a client and they are struggling because of a toxic culture? Like, do you ever have to tell people, oh, you're stuck in an environment where you actually can't get around this or that thing?
Yeah. And I think I built clarity, when I got to being a recruiter, because that's when you talk about, it's data points, right? I got to interview so many designers, from young designers to mid-level to senior to executives. And I would watch people from just coming out of school. And for me, I just wanted to meet everyone, because to me, it wasn't about just meeting the most successful, famous people. When we're in recruiting, there would be companies that were well known, like you had top consultancies like Frog or Smart or IDEO or Continuum, Ziba back then, right? You had corporations that were investing in design that, had a different environment, whether it was IBM or Hewlett Packard or Kohler, places like that. For me, as I met more and more people, and I had the opportunity to watch people from just young students to meeting them again at their midpoint, meeting them again, progressing to being really successful high up, or actually at some point, I started to, over the years, I started to notice that we all strive. There's an arc, right? Everybody's career has an arc. And I started to notice that there would be, everybody wants to achieve the highest arc possible, the longest arc possible. And it would be fascinating to me at first. It's like, why is this person so talented? And then someone peaking or plateauing. And then later you could just sense the pattern. And back then it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to gather some data points. It was just my fascination with people and being able to see their gift. I could see it. I could tell an employer, different companies, how I saw it. They could see it. And then I would start to notice that even though I could tell somebody's story to an employer, in the end, if someone's going in through to find a job, you're really the last one, one of those last phases. It's you in the spotlight. And it didn't matter if I could see what someone's abilities were. I could tell somebody, oh my God, you're gifted at this. Your sense of aesthetics, amazing. But also you have a certain sense of technical, mechanical, or combined with management or, digital, IoT, whatever combination somebody had, I could tell somebody and they could get it. I could get it, they could get it. I tell the employer could get it. But then the person would go into those final rounds of those interviews. And it doesn't really matter at the younger levels, but when you're getting to like senior designer level and you get to management and or principal designer track, as you move up in your career, it matters more that you know your own story. And it would get to the point where they go in for the interview, and I would talk to employers and it's like, what'd you think? And they go, no, doesn't have it. I'm like, I know they have it. And they would say, well, yeah, I know, but they don't have it. I mean, meaning that person didn't know how to articulate what their method was. And then it started to dawn on me and I remember this, how you meet someone who's like this incredible, let's say, artist or musician, and you go, how do you do that? And they go, I don't know. I just do this. I do it out of love. And I think that's the first phase, is just finding something that you love to do and doing it purely out of the staying in the zone, being in the love of the craft. I think that's over the years now, as I work with people, that's the first phase. First phase is loving your craft. You got to love what you do first. I think for designers, I think in this world, particularly any world that is creative, but it's a profession, we have a much higher bar where you got to love what you're doing, but then you want to build it as a profession. And then the final piece for me is, are you profitable with building passion, profession? And is it all locking in? Are you sustaining it?
And also probably you're still growing and developing yourself.
Right. So passion, the evolution of that sector, right? Are we still loving that work? And that happens. It happens when people lose the love, or that passion for that craft is evolving, and it's hard for someone to step back and see that.
Where are most of your clients coming to you when they want career coaching? Is it that like they have the love and they're looking for the compensation, or they're losing the love? Is there like a common trend?
There's a common trend where if somehow the passion combination with profession or profit, to me, it's those three circles, profit / sustainable. I mean, in the profession piece, in that if you had like a Venn diagram of these three spaces, passion, are you sustaining that love for it? Where is that passion? If it's moving on, where is that passion evolving into? But the profession piece is how do I sustain it, right? Different people come to me now. I mean, and this started, first I was doing this forever in recruiting, and then people started to come back to me and saying, look, I don't want you to just help me with this one job. I'm not knowing how to pick these jobs. I'm not knowing how. So the first phase is Do I know how to be seen? What is my craft? So there's stages of what people come to me for. First phase is, what is my craft? What is my expertise at this point? Some people are wondering, am I even viable in this industry? I've had people, young professionals, even like I'd say late mid designers to senior, where I've had people come to me and say, I've had 10 years in this industry. I left, I don't know, someone left chemistry or product management to come into design, and like, should I even bother staying in this industry? Am I worth it? Or should I just go back and go do something else? And so that first phase, I'll help people validate, like, what is your craft? What are you building? What are you good at? And does it align with what you love to do?
How do you assess it even? Because like industrial design is very much visual. Do you look at someone's portfolio and be like, hey, sorry, maybe not? Or you like do this conversation and you figure out if someone knows what they're talking about, or you don't see it in them?
I love looking at portfolios. It tells me a lot. It tells me a lot about the person's gift, but it also shows me their own perception of their gift and where it is. Meaning, I was going to say where it's stuck, but not stuck. But sometimes we have perception of our gift, but that can be outdated, because I think we evolve so quickly. Our sense of ourself is different than where we are actually, where we're striving to be next. Storytelling, portfolio is one of the most complicated methods of storytelling, right? And to me, the way portfolios work, it's just completely such a detractor, so ineffective.
Oh,
The
wow.
way people look at it and the way people present themselves. A lot of times we're showing work that's not even work that we want to do still. Because if you haven't done the work to decide what you want, you're showing what you've done. And in fact, a lot of times that just brings employers and clients, depending if you're entrepreneur looking for a full-time job or entrepreneur running your own consultancy, sometimes that work that you're showing is just giving people an impression of what you've done before, but it's not what you want to do next. And a lot of people get stuck with that incorrect framing, and they're doing all that work and it's not taking them to where they really want to be next. So portfolio tells me where someone's been, but where someone wants to go next, that's where, you kind of have to pull that takes a process to have someone walk through and say, where do you think you want to be? To me, that's the kind of work I think that's work that people forget to spend time to do. And I think it's also difficult. It can be awkward. It can be vulnerable and revealing, but sometimes it is, when people move through it, to me, it's the most self-actualizing, self-empowering, kind of to spend the time to honor what you've accomplished,
Mhm.
and to even then say, let me validate where I want to go next. Let me be more practiced and intentional about where I want to go next. And what do I really want to achieve next? There's exploration for the sake of just serendipity, and I believe in that. But then sometimes if this is, craft, but also profession, there's a little bit of what will the world take or bear, right? Because if it's just a hobby, then what do we care? It's only for self. But what I realize now is there's a duality of, first, what you want for yourself, but then there's also, what does the world want? Where's the market for it?
Mhm.
Right? How do you want to practice it? How do you want to practice it that it honors who you are versus just do it for the world? And most people come to me and they'll say, hey, I can't find any jobs. There's nothing out there. In fact, this is actually one of the most common first phases of awareness. People will say, I've looked, I'm at this next level. I want to get to a manager. I want to get to director, or I'm VP. I want to get to the SVP, or I'm senior, and I want to decide if I go principal or management, whatever it may be, or pivoting to a different space. And most common comment I get from people is, I've looked, I know where I want to go, and I've looked and I don't see anything. But then when we go through this process, I think when someone learns to honor the way they work and their craft, all of a sudden, when they reevaluate what's out there, it's amazing, because I'll have people who wanted to stay at a company but think they have to leave, and all of a sudden they recognize where those opportunities are, and how to own claiming it. I mean, that's a second half of this process, right?
Well, because just to take a moment on what you said about portfolios and getting people to move forward rather than just the past, how do they then showcase the thing that they want to do? Like, is it just that they have really, really good language to talk about it and they get better in interviews of directing that? Or do you also work on how they're going to present projects differently or do new projects or sort of get all of that in line?
The first phase is to understand what you're good at and what's so unique about your expertise in your craft. I mean, let me just say that people come to me and go, I've got this vast network, it's not working. Or I know a lot of the people I work with are already leaders. So they are representing for the companies that they work for. They're presenting. Some have had TED Talks. Some of them are like on judges for some of the top design competitions and on the board of directors or for different design orgs, winning, IDA awards written up in Fast Company. What they're doing there, though, is representing the company and representing the product. And yes, you need to have, you don't need to have a very vast network. You want to know how to articulate and tell your story. But if you don't know what that story is and where you want to go next, it doesn't matter. You'll get something, but it may not be where you want to be taking your career. So there are phases where, let me just say that there's different ways where I break down my customer base. There are some people where they don't even know, should I be in this industry? What do I need to do to cultivate my career to advance in this industry? There's some people who are not seen and they're not receiving any opportunities. There's some people who are seen, but they're not knowing how to land the opportunity, land it representing their expertise, not knowing how to claim the right position, maybe always being offered positions that are too low for them, and or winning opportunities, but the salary is too low. So that's second phase. Third phase, there are professionals where they have offers after offers, and they are seen by the industry, recognized for their gift. I mean, the corporations that they work for, the consultancies that they work for, or written up and known that offers are coming to them, but they find that they can't even go through the interviews. I have people where they don't even know, they just don't even want to take the interviews, or they even take it and they get offers, but they don't even accept them because they don't know how to choose. It doesn't matter how well packaged you are. I mean, there's a phase of understanding how to frame your expertise, how to articulate it and talk about it verbally, written, in a portfolio. There's so many forms of that. It's also knowing what you want. So I guess the one example I would give to someone is, if you went dating, you ask the world, okay, where's my soulmate? Hello, where's my soulmate? And you don't even know what you want. Doesn't matter how many people come to you if you don't know what you're looking for. If you don't know what you want, if you don't know if what you want is right for you, healthy for you, will grow you, will evolve you. I've had people come to me after they've taken a few opportunities, and I've had some people think that they were going to pivot. In fact, one of the most common pivots is pivoting from ID to UX. And I've had someone who pivoted to UX and then said, oh my God, I don't love it. So I made this drastic pivot. There's some people who can't move, frozen in where they are, and they can't stray from the company that they're at, the industry they're in, or the profession, the expertise that they're in. They want to, and they don't know how. They don't know how to see what's next.
So how much of this is on individuals or your clients? This is people like us as designers. How much of it is their personal responsibility to discover what the world wants and what they want and position themselves in harmony? And how much of it is that companies should change practices? Is there stuff that can be done there? Like you mentioned, portfolio is not a perfect method, but you've explained that from the personal standpoint of what you can do with your portfolio. But are companies needing to position themselves in a different way to attract the right person and convey to that person, we are who you want to work for. Please take our offer instead of getting passed. Like, where can they meet us in the middle should they be doing that?
There's work on both sides. I think that having been in recruitment for more than 20 years, every company, every hiring team that I've ever met, whether the hiring manager is not from design, is from marketing or engineering or product, or even if they're coming from design, there's so much that they don't know. To me, it's about perception. There's so much here that's human. It's so much about what that team makeup is and the org structure and what that team needs. And there's a lot that a hiring manager doesn't necessarily know about their own style, what their team needs, how to frame it, what they're looking for. A lot of times we find most companies out there are companies that know, I think, what they're looking for, but there's more companies than not that don't know. And by the way, this isn't just entrepreneur. There's even companies that need an expertise on outside consulting level that don't necessarily realize it either. I'll have companies that come to us and say, I'm looking for an industrial designer, but he's not making a thing, or I'm not sure if it's UX or brand strategy or ID or service design. And then we'll have to break it down for them what they need. To me, the method of job, the method that's out there is so flawed. It just doesn't work, particularly for design, I would say, or anything that is, to me, creative, strategic, innovative, anything that's pioneering and progressive. It's hard to synthesize this into keywords.
What would an ideal scenario be? What do you think are some really great ways you've seen companies hire or weed people out?
For us, when we walk a client, and so what we've done now, we've moved back, actually, we're moving away from recruitment and we're moving into talent strategies for employers, where we'll help them understand if they're going to, especially if they're going to be hiring more than one design professional, one type, one expertise. We want to sit down with them and help them understand where are they today, what's their team makeup as it is. Sometimes there's hidden talent in their team that they don't even know exists, but sometimes that gap of what they need, to me, when HR comes to us with a hierarchy, it's all plotted out, even lines, little boxes. And the reality of design is so collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
You watch those human pyramids where we're all different sizes, we're all different strengths and weaknesses and gifts and interests. And that gap is such a unique shape that's what we try to help an employer figure out. And once they understand that particular unique makeup of what that gap is, then we help them understand what kind of talent exists out there in the market. Sometimes they won't even think to tell us that, well, this is what our gap is now. We can't create, we can't build new product. We can't evolve our product line until we get this expertise. But then sometimes they'll say, next, we're going to want to bring in IoT into this. So we're like, all right, well, let us know everything you need, because maybe there's that person who has this combination that you need. And a lot of times we find hiring managers don't necessarily know. There's what they need, but there's also what they want, not realizing what's out there in the marketplace. This industry evolves so quickly that some design departments don't even know the kind of talent that exists out there.
Right.
And the methods that are being, literally evolving so quickly that, certain departments or other companies or other industries, there's a methodology that's developed that could be useful for a company in this other sector.
And they're unaware of it. So it sounds like a pretty similar goal on both sides, actually. You're just trying to help people understand how to define their needs better and better, more specifically. And that helps the right person fit in the right keyhole. Yeah.
Yeah. There's leadership styles, right? There's culture. And by the way, culture, to me, culture is so unique to that department. It's oftentimes the leaders at top, the distillation from even the founders to the leaders. Then there's that uniqueness of what that department, depending on who that hiring manager is and their style. So to understand their strengths and weaknesses so that you understand who's supporting them and in what way are they supporting them, but what that gap is outside of the skill set or the product line and what stage is this product line at,
So is the state of hiring getting better or staying the same or getting worse? I mean, there's a lot of things that are changing with HR and recruiting potentially using AI tools. There's lots of turnover. There's kind of turmoil for companies in this way, and things are different post-pandemic. What do you see happening?
I do think that digital and technology is competition. It's interesting being in this industry for so long. There was a time where we wished for more businesses to realize the value of design. And here we are, we've come to that point where business in every sector realizes the value of design, strategy, innovation, but there are more and more people in it now more than ever. So there's a commodification of it, absolutely. You still have more companies that don't understand what design's value is. And to me, this is a responsibility for this industry. As design professionals, we need to learn how to claim our value more. I have to say that I meet more professionals who are undervalued, undercompensated. And this is throughout all of my years as a recruiter to shifting into coaching. And that's why in the last year, we've now realized that we're doing so much work in coaching and it's helping people more. Honestly, in recruitment, we've raised the bar in what we want to do in recruitment. But there are a lot of people I know who are recovering recruiters. We've set a standard of who we want to work with. And in recruitment, companies will put their best face forward and say that this is a great company, great environment. You know, we're like Santa Claus's elves. I feel like we're like the wish list. Just give us great people. But companies, they're not always creating the best environment. So in the business model of recruitment, I don't have the time to guide someone how to make the right choices. And what I see time and time again is if someone has been looking for a really long time and they're not understanding the full method of what you really got to do to understand the job market and how the recruitment process works in any company, whether I'm talking about the job market and how people post jobs, and those job descriptions don't even articulate really what that job is about or how to read through that to understand company culture. What I see time and time again is most people, when you get to a point where you finally are getting seen by a company and the company starts to put together an offer, start to line you up with that offer, most people take the offer without even realizing that there's so many choices. And to me, your career is like a game of chess. You can start that game knowing the basics, but really one person's life, one person's lifetime career, that game from beginning to end, that's one round. And wouldn't you want to know all the methods and the strategies before you play that game without knowing what that playing field, how it's going to change, how it's going to affect your choices? Because the later you do this, the fewer options you have later to choose, right? And I watch employers and they've got teams. They've got a hiring team. They've got teams of hiring managers, teams of HR, legal, procurement. There's just so much. They have so many data points. And when we go through our career, how many data points do you really have? Not that many. And it's just something that I've, built out over time to watch people, doesn't matter where they're looking to go in their career, kind of seeing the same patterns happen. And in the business model of recruitment, I can't spend that amount of time to have you own that understanding yourself, to just understand how to make the choices.
Let's maybe talk about something which I think is very common in industrial design. Individuals, when thinking about places to work, it's usually about the product you want to work on, not necessarily about the company, culture, where your skills go. It's more like, someone really wants to do footwear, so it's like Nike or Adidas, or someone really wants to do tech, so it goes Google, Apple, Meta. It's about the product, not looking into my own skills and asking myself, maybe not the product I like is the one I will be happiest making. Maybe I need to discover what type of products and industries I will be the happiest about. I just don't know about it. Do you have any thoughts on this?
There's one of my clients that actually is just about to graduate. And in my first session with him, and this is what he said to me, he goes, wow, I never, I love what I do. He actually loves footwear, sports. And he's like, I never thought to think about my career as a career. I'm an artist, I'm a designer, and like all my colleagues, I love the craft so much. How dare I think of this as a profession? This is not a job. This is my art form. And now, 15 years later, I guess I should have known that I was already leading and managing when I didn't even, I was just doing it because I loved it. I didn't realize that titles made a difference. I'm like, yeah, it does. And it affects, money, which I love this industry because money is never the primary objective. You kind of have to understand it too, and the balance between craft and what you're worth, and how to get the world to understand the value of that.
I think in a lot of creative careers, there is this sort of insidious attitude that if you make money off your creativity, and if you are successful, and, for a musician that's like signing to a record label or something like that, maybe for designers, it's working for a huge corporation, being in-house, I don't know. But it's the idea that if you do something like that, you're selling out. Is that do you get a lot of that in your clients?
I think it's so sad. I mean, you go to the concerts to listen to your favorite, I don't know, this is probably an old group for you guys. I love Black Keys. Am I sad that they're they're successful? They're still they're still artists, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
What about Zaha Hadid or, like architects or But I heard a professor once say to me, I tell students, if you're going to be a designer, you better be ready to do this and starve or, not make a living off, be a starving artist. And I was mortified. I'm like, what? We can be successful. And the crazy thing is, throughout my career, I've literally seen thousands upon thousands and thousands of portfolios. And when I talk to professionals about what they're doing in their jobs, they are clueless how much impact they are bringing to those companies. How these corporations, when I hear the stories or the consultancies that they work with, can't make anything. They have hundreds of professionals waiting, hundreds of marketing people, product managers, engineers, like factories, everybody holding their breath, waiting for you to come up with this amazing design that's going to make them millions of dollars. And somehow so many designers are just, I got to work harder. I got to learn new skills. Well, that's because we love learning. This industry can learn. Honestly, we'd learn even if we had to pay. Well, this is what happens. People pay for it, right? We pay to learn new skills, and we love it to learn new things. And I love that. But you want to realize, are you making money? When I started coaching in the beginning, I had professionals coming to me and I realized, wow, well, someone had reached a height, but somehow they're like one of the most common, there's different patterns that I've noticed. Either senior designer is one of the most common ceilings, right? Where someone doesn't know, how do I evolve to the next level? Actually, many senior designers I find are already managing, but it's not, they don't get the title, but yet they're doing the work. Or someone has moved up to management, but they can't sustain it. Or have been in a track, whether it's in a company or in an industry or in an expertise, but they've outgrown that love. I think that was something that Marge had talked about, right? Like, do you still love it? That evolves, and being able to just realize where it's moving to. I just find that there's so many ways that designers bring value to the companies that they're working for, working with, that they have no idea that you're just leaving so much money on the table. There's so much output of what this industry gives, and not knowing how to claim it, not knowing how to own it. And I'd say that while there are fewer companies, there's a lot of companies right now, we're in a point where economy, it's doubtful, and it's happened so many times where companies are letting go, laying off professionals everywhere. And of course, for a lot of them, design is that piece where it's the last piece in the process. So they think, all right, we don't need design. We don't need to be making new things, new pretty things. So let's just let them go first, right? We've got product that we're going to run with. But we're coming into a really interesting time, particularly post-pandemic, that has really surged us forward into a new era. Completely, we're talking decades coming up. We're talking economies are changing, logistics, supply chains are changing. Environmentally, the world is changing. That's affecting businesses everywhere. Every industry, every type of business economy is changing. And the businesses in those sectors, all of them, any of them, are grappling with, oh my God, what do we have to change? And historically, when you look at the way business is tracked to be successful, it's about, let's build a method, let's build out something that works. And then the longer you can have that system running like an assembly line and just keep that running, that's success. But now businesses have to reframe marketing. They have to reframe what the customer's needs are, because those value systems are changing. Environment's changing. So all of a sudden logistics is changing. The way we run business. I mean, so much is changing. And there's so many businesses that don't know how to deal with that. And more than any sector or creative profession, I find industrial designers understand this more than any other space. Someone who's just specialized in, well, and by the way, when I work in coaching now, I work with, industrial designers, UX, strategists, service design, branding, marketing. It depends. It's about people who are evolving their gift to the next level. What is that next level? But people who are more strategic, oftentimes you're so multifaceted that the most common challenge that I hear people saying is, HR, I'll meet a new company, and that HR person or the hiring manager will say, wow, I could see that you've brought so much value. You've brought millions to that company, or opened up and created new business models and sustained a product line that was failing and brought it to be, number 3 in the market. But you're so talented, but I don't know where to put you. And I think that design is so multifaceted. It's kind of like the chameleon. I think about my son's storybook, where that chameleon can do so many things. And you need to know how to frame it depending on who you're talking to, because they don't have the capacity to understand all of these abilities.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
I think for the most part, I'd like to understand a little bit more why you feel like industrial designers tend to be more adaptable in that list of people you just mentioned.
I think we have an understanding of, we're learning our aesthetic sensibility. We're understanding technical, mechanical. We're talking about manufacturing. We're talking about the business of making, and it's evolved from making physical pretty things to physical pretty things and technical things, multiple components, multiple divisions, technical, digital, physical. Then it's marketing and messaging. Then it's framing. Then it's branding. These are all so many financial, right? There's a lot of components there. And understanding the bar for each of those, but not each of them separate. And I think in business, you have the tendency where each of those falls into a different silo, and everything becomes so siloed. And different designers, I think, have a capacity to understand a variety of different things and how they pull all those components together. But we all have different disparate abilities that we pull together. Some of us have a brand aesthetic of understanding how to bring in together a collection. What's failing in that collection, or what needs to change? How do you tell the product managers? How do you work with the engineers to make it so it's feasible? How do you work with manufacturing? How do you work with sourcing? How do we build it within a price point? Do you see how many disparate abilities design gets?
Right.
I'll tell you that most of the people, when I meet designers, many of you could be product officers or head of, chief innovation officers, CEOs of companies, but then designers don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I don't want to do the business. I'll just do it for you so I can do the fun part. Let me just be creative. So many times I've seen that. And you're like, oh yeah, I know I could be a CEO. I don't want to do that. It's really funny.
Like, yeah, you're saying that designers have all of these touch points that give them a lot of perspective. And I think that's kind of what we're getting at, that with that much perspective, we bring in a type of expertise and strategic thinking that other roles can struggle with compared to us. And there's a lot of this that makes us want to push against boundaries and assert ourselves, assert our expertise, but it's not always welcome, or because companies and other roles don't understand the broad extent that design can touch and command. What are people supposed to do when they're wanting to push against these boundaries and assert, because it's probably for the good of the business or the brand, right? Like, we're not doing this out of like a narcissistic, well, sometimes, but hopefully not, right? It's just like, we're on the same team. We're trying to accomplish something great. Is it because they really should try to transition into a different role, be a product owner, be a VP, or is this something that you really can accomplish from the designer's seat? And what is it we have to do differently? Or is it always going to be a struggle and you just sort of steel yourself for it?
Can I add on to that? I think also, though, something has to come within the company, right? Because sometimes I think we run into the business side downplaying the capacity for big thinking that design as a department could have. Like, it's not seen as the department where like all of the business ideas or the really smart like ideas are going to come from, like, especially if you compare maybe design and engineering. I feel like I often see the engineers get looked towards for the brands maybe, and that really disincentivizes the creatives in the company to be at the table of decision making. I think that that's a big flaw, because I think we actually have a big skill for it. But yeah, I'm curious about your reaction to that, Angela.
Yeah, I think it's hard for just business overall to understand how to see the value of design when it's so esoteric, right? This is, how do you see when something's gracefully designed? They don't understand how to see all those iteration of that process. And that process is so complicated. They don't have the capacity to see it. I think you guys asked about a lot of different things there. I'm also, coming from this community, I'm passionate about what I've seen, what design can do. And when I look at, certainly I'm working with designers, but when I think about when I work with companies and whether it's recruitment or whether it's through coaching, the stories that I hear about the scenarios, I think that designers are more clued in and understanding what it takes to pull all these disparate pieces of what you have to do to make business successful, right? Whether it's manufacturing, design, finance, productizing, branding, all the different sectors. But I think design cares about it more and has more of an ability to make it happen, but we need to learn how to articulate this and defend it and defend and define the impact that we bring to the table. That's what I'd love to see happen. And this is right now I'm doing this on a, first I did it one-on-one, and now we're doing it in a group scenario, and which is amazing because I'm realizing that people can help each other kind of see themselves. One of my common lines I love to say is, how can you read your own label if you're inside your own jar?
That's really a cute image. I like that.
Right. And sometimes, and like I thought about when I was moving through my career, earlier stages, I had no idea. And I was blindly just going at it. So if you can have colleagues that kind of reflect back to you, kind of hold the mirror and say, this is what you look like back there, or this is how you're doing what you're doing. But you can't really create and do and be in that zone and yet look at yourself at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that, knowing your own sense of who you are and what you bring to me, business is so hard. Even harder to me than finding a soulmate, because I don't know, you're making something, you've got deadlines, you're creating, you're building, you're doing, you're collaborating with multiple people. This isn't even just being a part of a town. There's multiple objectives that are aligning there, right? So you got to know yourself and what you bring to the table, but better yet, you also then need to know what you're walking into and how to gauge if that's what you want. Nothing is perfect. No environment is perfect, but it's knowing how to see that environment to say, what I'm going to deliver is going to take time. Is this community really ready for that? And if it's not ready, what am I ready to do to make that happen? And to me, there's different levels of awareness that allows you to operate at a higher level. So if you understand yourself better, then you understand. To me, I think designers are leaders. I mean, we're pioneers, we're change agents. So we're forging on, whether we're in a leadership management role or not, we're forging on and we're creators of possibility. But you also need to know that if you're so far ahead, everyone else is behind in their awareness of what's possible. And you've got to understand how to bring them to the table. I don't know. Am I like jumping all over the place? But
No, that makes
I see it,
sense.
but I don't know if you guys can see what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
I do.
Following. Yeah.
I'm really curious about those group sessions, though. I want to ask you a little more about that and this new way that you work with clients. I'm trying to imagine myself in a session like that to talk about career and some of these things that I think could be uncomfortable. But like you said, you need to reveal some things about yourself, and what better way than to have people outside of you reflecting it to you. Are there difficulties in getting people to kind of like accept this method, and how do you do that? Or like, does it just go really well easily?
We don't work with everyone, and someone has to want this. So we do have a qualification process that we look at. I mean, I've actually had someone offer and throw a lot of money at me, 20 grand once, just to have us do the whole process for him. I'm like, that's not even going to work. I don't care how much money you throw at it. I'm not going to be able to pull out the answers out of his head without him going through this and taking the time out to decide, what do you want? Don't just,
That's bizarre. He just wanted you to tell him what his passion in life is.
And so
that's worth a lot more than $20,000.
This is being a psychic. It is high profitable industrial design psychic.
Right. Say, hey, I'll take it. I'll tell you where you can go. No, I'm like, to a point, and this is traditional recruitment. You could look at someone's history and say, oh, you've done that, so you can just do more of this. That's not what I don't want to just find somebody one more other job that's going to make them money. I've seen people go through one opportunity after another in design. More than any other industry, you're having to stop and reassess every single time, every move. To me, other careers are like checkers, where you just climb, you choose one ladder: marketing, science, math, lawyer, doctor, teaching. You just straight up that one ladder. And people often are not needing to reevaluate. But design, every step you're taking, you're cultivating, you're curating this body of knowledge, right? People are saying, do I pivot into this space? Do I pivot in from, footwear to medical? Or do I go from medical to I'm going, I actually love structural packaging and I can dominate in this way, or I've understood how to dominate in architecture. How do I evolve it, but still love it, but I don't love management anymore? There's all these different ways to see and honor what's evolving. Sometimes people don't love the craft anymore. Being able to acknowledge that too.
keep your role from turning into just a therapist for people, though,
I was going to
honestly.
say, this sounds like
Because I
therapy.
think you're getting into topics that are like self-esteem and money sort of anxiety and things that are definitely so emotionally loaded. Do you have boundaries for yourself around where you won't go?
I have to tell people I'm not a therapist. You
Mhm.
know, sometimes people have been burnt. Sometimes I've met people too late. There's a point where I've met people where they don't know where to go. And then there's the other people sometimes where someone's like hit that, you know, not a thousand times, but hundreds of times they've hit that brick wall. There's a point where you lose your drive, where
Mm.
you lose your interest to even try. Even if you were given the answers, there's a point where some people are just, I'm done, you
Wow.
know, and they give up. And that to me, I know people who I know so many people who have been some of the most talented, brilliant leaders, both men and women, been through some toxic environment or just picked different, not knowing how to honor their craft and realize their potential, and maybe just not found up and just haven't found opportunity that they're not earning, they're not in the industry doing the work that they love, or literally giving it away for free.
Right.
There's a time and place for that, by the way, but
Right.
but knowing how to honor your gift. And I've met people who, you know, have left the industry because they can't handle it. I mean, then there's some, by the way, sometimes some people, it's not their craft. I mean,
Right.
you know, I've met people where, you know, I have to tell them the heavy truth. It's like, you know, if you want to be in this space, you know, I get to show them like, this is the bar, you know, you're not there. You can spend, you know, how many more years to evolve your aesthetic sensibility or technical, mechanical, or your leadership or your understanding of business, but it's going to take you that much longer. So at least for people to know, I mean, I just want people to know a little bit of where they're at, so they kind of believe and dream and reach for whatever you want, but understand the game and understand what you've got to work on, what you've got to build, or what's so easy that you could be there right now.
It seems incredibly invaluable that you have all this data, right? This is the thing you're saying. Everybody is missing all of the content that you have
Yeah.
seen thousands of examples of. And so the data that they get from working with you seems like something that there's no other way to access that, really.
And you can do this on your community. Turn to here's easy ways you can do this. I mean, turn to your colleagues to ask them and say, I'm ready. Tell me what you think about, you've worked with me, either coworkers or bosses or previous colleagues, even not design, marketing, you know, manufacturing, engineering, product managers. Ask people what it's like to work with you, and what your work is like. You want to get some sense of reflection of where, you know, what your craft is, right? I mean, if we're doing it just for the heck of it, just for the fun of it, and it's not a profession, it's not a livelihood, and it's not bringing you income, then what the heck, you don't need to know. But if you want to do this because you love it, but you want to build a career out of it, and you want to one day own your own consultancy, by the way, more than 50% of this industry at some point, I almost say that almost a majority of professionals in this industry at some point dabble in running their own consultancy, right? Because we all dream about that. But then many leave it because they don't know how to build it for themselves. That's even a track that we look at for someone to say, are you meant to do this? Yeah. Do you have what it takes to do that? And if you were going to build your own consultancy, or, you know, and that might one day grow into a practice, what do you have to do? You know, where is your strength and your weakness there? How would you build it for you? And a lot of times I meet people where then they want to go back in-house. And actually, when in-house is great for a lot of people, you know.
Mhm.
But wouldn't you want to know versus how many attempts of trying, and not necessarily, because each step it's an investment. Every job that you land, it's going to take you at least a few years if you really want to really see it through. And then I see companies where they lay off people, and sometimes I find when I work with someone, I help them realize what it would take for them to really evolve within a company. You know, in all my years of recruitment, it's fascinating because, and this is on both sides, I meet people where they say, I've left the company. I just tried every way possible to stay there. I couldn't find my way. And then, you know, and so we'll tell them about what opportunities we have. But then it's so funny because in all of my years of doing this, there are times where I've met both the employer and the talent. And then the employer, the hiring manager will say, well, we're looking for a new person. Strange, our number 2 or number 1 is left. And we thought they would stay forever. I don't know what happened. And I'm like, I hear both sides of the story. And it's crazy because that person really wanted to stay. So some of the people I work with get to evolve within the companies that they're at. I have one woman where this corporation has invested in a lot of designers, all kinds of, industrial design, UX, strategy, brand, all, CMF or CMD, depending on the company and how they frame it. But this one designer had, the corporation gave this woman so many leadership programs to upskill her because they love her and she loved the company, wanted to stay. Ironically, two people below her got promoted over her because she learned, but she didn't know how to own it. And she just instead gave it. There's actually a thing that I started to notice. Certain people, we can learn something, but then we teach it, but then we're not doing it.
Mm.
I watch myself now. I notice, am I not learning? What am I teaching and not learning? So going through the program, within 2 months, this woman started to realize what was so unique about her combination, her archetype. We talk about your talent algorithm because it's so, I used to say talent DNA, but DNA doesn't really change. But actually our gift changes so quickly that we don't even see it. I mean, we mature. I mean, you think about elementary school to junior high to high school to college to PhD, our gift changes. And within 2 months of this program, she started landing, just in the way we teach her how to network, she was landing offers. Literally, they were saying, you need to apply here. We want you. And then they were chasing her. And then she got to choose and rose up within the company that she's at finally. And she rose 2 steps in this huge corporation that has tons of creatives. She moved to a band level 8. I know every corporation has different phrases, and everybody else in design was at level 6. And it's amazing to see someone rise finally because they knew how to own their gift.
Yeah.
And I think designers, we only think about, more often than not, I think I find people that only think, what does that company want? What does that company need? What does that industry want? What does that profession require? But they're not listening to themselves. If you're going to be, and I talk about this with leaders, so I have different programs for leaders, and I have different programs who are people are just trying to understand their gift. But when you think about it, when you're at the top and you're leading, there's so much pulling at you, above you, diagonally above you, above you, beside you, below you. I mean, there's just so much pulling at someone when you're at that height of impact, and you really want to own how that can help you or hurt you, because there's a lot of pressure there, outward requests to need. And if you're going to keep pulling all that together, you need to know which of what is right for you. Does that make sense?
It does. And this has been a really great conversation about the gravity of developing career, and just to hear what you're doing to help people understand their gift and their talent algorithm, right? And like what it is that they need in their life for their career, for having like happy career, productive career, successful career. Kind of with that in mind, this is something we love to ask everyone, and I feel like it's maybe particularly meaningful for you as someone who is helping people reflect on this. Like, so for yourself, what is it that is your unique gift that you bring to the design world? What is it that is sort of your talent algorithm then, so to speak?
After all these years of doing this work for others, I finally have moved myself. I mean, I think about how I've been in the space of recruitment for more than 20 years. And then in the last 15 years, career coaching, I call it career strategist, having built that heuristic understanding about people's talent and how do you cultivate that. But after all these years of helping others, finally in the last 5 years, I've really made space to move into coaching. It's actually really interesting because while I've helped others do this, my team actually turned to me and it's like, what are you going to do? Step into what you really want to do. Our focus is all on coaching because it's incredibly powerful to see someone own how to respect themselves, how to respect their gift, whatever phase, however it's evolving, and to claim that respect, to stand for it, to own it in such a way that you're owning every engagement, every single company that someone gets to meet, every single project or decision that they make, being able to make that decision, respecting themselves is it's so empowering and so gratifying that I finally this year have finally said, even though I can bring value in recruitment, that customer doesn't understand, doesn't respect it. And I finally made that move myself. And it's hard. And I get it. Like I have my coaches who are just helping me and saying, step into what you really want to do, and I understand that feeling myself, because even as I help others, we all grapple with that feeling of, do I let go? I'm like, well, I'm good at this, I'm good at that, I'm good at that. You just got to own what's going to really make the impact, what brings me chills. It's amazing. It's gratifying when I can see someone open their eyes to see who they really are. That's the work that I love doing. So it's fascinating, because even though I can see other people doing it, I had to call on my coaches to help me. I've worked on different people that helped me realize, what am I needing to move through? What are my limiting beliefs that, even though I consciously know it, am I moving through it? Am I really stepping in to being really courageous?
This is such a great answer, that your value is that you can understand who you are and approach to all the opportunities and challenges with respect on both sides.
Yes.
It was a great conversation, but also so much heavy content we talked about. Let us finish with a rather silly question, which we like to ask everyone because it's a playful way to get to know someone a little bit more. Angela, what is your favorite color?
My favorite color is green. I love green. When I was young, I actually I did this little thing. First it was blue, then it was yellow. I'm like, oh, blue and yellow make green. And then it's funny, just throughout my life, green to me represents change. And when you talk to people about color and the symbolism of it, it represents change. It's understanding how to move through change. And the one thing that I love that I've learned to teach, at one point I thought, oh, I'm not designing anymore. I'm not a creative. But oh my God, I am. I've become a career strategist, a talent strategist, and I'm helping people understand how to iterate through life. And the most painful piece of iterating through life is realizing that the iteration that you're moving through, is it time to let it go? How do you evolve it? How do you step into that next new? And I think it's pretty powerful when someone really owns that.
Absolutely. I think you are creating, you're helping craft everybody's careers, right? Which is really a whole other type of sculpting, like your original form. We've had such a fantastic time talking to you. I feel like we could go for another hour, but in lieu of that, I guess you have a podcast that we would love you to be able to mention to everybody as well. So maybe, do you want to tell people where they could learn more about your work, even sign up for a coaching session with you, listen to your podcast, etc.?
I think the best way you can go find all of that information is go to my LinkedIn, and you can find whatever programs that if there's something being launched. Like right now, our next cohort for our Thrive by Design program, you can go to thrivebydesign.today, and you can check out our program there. We have a masterclass for executives that are already at that place that want to sustain those positions. That's a mastermind program that people can access. They can message me on LinkedIn and go to our link tree and find all that information. If you go to Yeh Ideology, you'll see all of our information there too.
Okay, fantastic. We'll definitely also put links to your info in our website and whatnot. Well, everybody, you know that you can find us at beyondraypodcast.com, and our Instagram is WID_Seattle. We've had a really, really fantastic conversation with you, Angela, and can't wait to find out more about what you and all of your clients that you've been coaching go on to do. I feel like they're incredibly lucky to have you.
It's been a pleasure. I'm honored to do this work. I found my calling, and it's beautiful. And I love when I can help someone else find theirs. So thank you guys for letting me share this. And I love your podcast, and it's such an honor to be a part of it. So thank you.